You don't have to ask. I'm joking. Okay, we come to technicians now. Not enough to give the Daf. Have a BA in electronics.
Rabbi, you ever go on trips to Europe and stuff like that?
I don't think I've been gone on, yes.
Yeah, we did on the morning. I probably did years ago.
Yeah. Italy a couple of times, Spain. You want to go somewhere?
Yeah, okay. I'm not going. I don't have somebody like.
I'll let you know, but he didn't. Got a deal. That's right.
Recording in progress.
All right, שבוע טוב רבותיי, זכו שבנבות, נעמוד בטובות. Start the summer's month.
I was a little confused yesterday. At giving instructions and videos.
Well, yesterday's Daf was
No. About we made our error, which means that we can prepare food for
Friday.
carry. But I was curious about when can I prepare the candles? When can we set the table? I mean, that's not food.
That's part of it. That's part of it. This is Adluke Shargat. Part of the words are Adluke Shargat, to light the candle. Toda Rabba. I'm good. Thank you. All right, what's today, boys? Mem Mawah. Okay, Mawah. Mem Chet.
48.
48. But we're going to start on 47 on the bottom. حد جير بحد ابن الشقراء.
You were near Keith.
What? Oh yeah, sure.
All the smart kids.
No, Yevamos is one. So it's in the cycle.
Not all kids. I mean,
Not in elementary, in high school, in yeshiva. Yeah.
All high school kids.
No, yeshiva. Yeshiva is part of the 6-year cycle. It's a rough.
Very
rough. We're doing it. Gemara Yevamot Daf Memchet. Our Masechet was dedicated to the refuah shelema Shimon ben Simcha. Enna refanalo betoch sharchona amo Yisrael. Amen. We begin today's daf on Mem Zayin Amud Bet, and we are right at the first wide line. Echad ger v'echad eved mishuchrav. So that's actually a quote that we had in the Baraita above that said that just like a ger, when you want to convert him, you have to put him in the mikveh, and he has to have kavanah to accept upon himself the mitzvot willingly. So too an eved, mazeh eved. So we know that an eved kana'ani, so you're able to buy him, and initially you're buying him as a slave. And initially you have to dip him into the mikveh. You can even do that against his will. But the point is, once he goes to the mikveh the first time, he has upon himself mitzvot like a lady. So he's like a quasi-Jew. And then after he gets freed, they dip him in the mikveh a second time. And that second tevilah makes him a full-fledged Jew. Now he has to keep all the mitzvot. And the Gemara sounds like over here that just like a ger has to accept upon himself the mitzvot when he goes into that tevilah, so to an eved kenani, when he gets freed and they're dipping him a second time, he has to have kavanah to accept upon himself the tariag mitzvot. No. So now the Gemara comes along and says, Kas al kadatach. So it sounds like over here, the kabel alab on mitzvot. Now, what does it mean when it says in the Braita that the ger, the regular convert, and the eved mishukral is equal? It sounds like the gaber, the mitzvot, that they both have to accept the mitzvot when they go into the mikveh. Gemara asks on this, what do you mean? We have a contradiction. Aval Ebed Mishukral in Sarich Lekabel. The Braita says the exact opposite. That only a ger has to accept upon himself Tariag Mitzvot in the Tevilah, but an Ebed Mishukral does not, and therefore, and Ashi explains why. If you look at Ashi, he says the Misha'ah Shetuvel L'Shem Abdut Shayak BeMitzvot. That she gives us a distinction why an Eved Kenani does not have to accept upon himself mitzvot during the second Tevilah, because already he accepted miksat mitzvot in the first Tevilah. So he's halfway there. So already he accepted upon himself a certain amount. Already he has things that are on him already, like the Pasuk says, being a fish, being a matecha v'agir. That the halakha says that the Eved Kenani has to keep Shabbat already. So therefore, since already he is accepting the mitzvot partially, Masechet the ger, he was a goy. He didn't do anything. And therefore, when he goes into the mikveh, he has to accept upon himself the mitzvot. That's the logic of the second braita. But the problem is we have a contradiction because the first braita sounds like he has to accept upon himself the mitzvot. So Rav Sheshat is going to give us an answer. Amar Rav Sheshat la kasha ha Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. That opinion that says that the ger does not have the eved does not have to accept upon himself the mitzvot. It's following the Bishimon ben Elazar and Ha Rabbanan. And the first Braita is following the opinion of Rabbanan. Now, where do we see the mahlok between these two rabbis? By the case of Eshet Yefat To'ah. What's that case? An amazing case that Torah talks about. Person goes out to war, soldier, and he sees a lady in the war, Goya, and he has a desire for her. The Torah comes along and says that you take her home and you go through a process with her and you go through a type of conversion, at least according to this Gemara, and then it's permissible to go with her. Normally, the conversion under these matters would not be permissible. She only converted her so you could go with her. But nonetheless, the Gemara says that in this case, they knew that if you're not going to give him a leniency, the answer is too strong and he's going to take her, in a forbidden way. So therefore, they were more lenient on the way we can convert her. So the Gemara now begins the discussion of how we convert this lady. Netanya, v'acheta et aviha ve'etima. So it says she has to go through a process. She has to grow her hair and her nails, etc. And she cries for her father and her mother. And then the pasuk says only after that process, I'm going to see how long it takes, either 30 days or 90 days to be a mahloket. Then already he's allowed to go with her. So the Gemara says, when does she have to go through this whole process of shaving her hair and staying home and crying for this amount of days? That's when she didn't accept upon herself to convert. Then we make her go through this process. But if she accepts upon herself to convert, we put her in the mikveh immediately, umutar ba miyad, even though she didn't go through all these different processes over here. Now the Gemara says that Bi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Apal Bi Shelo Kibbela Aleha. And Bi Shimon ben Elazar has a hadushi. You have a lady, Eshet Yefat To'ah, and she doesn't want to accept the conversion, but the soldier wants to be with her. He's got a problem because she doesn't want to accept to convert. So the Bishop has a trick how to bypass her refusal. Again, if she accepts the Tanyag Mitzvot, that's a put her in the mikveh, and you have a beautiful conversion. But what do you do if she doesn't? So the Bishop has figured out what we call in Hebrew a patent. What is it? Now, you're allowed to take her as a shafha. Now, we learned earlier that the shafha, the way you indoctrinate a shafha into Abdut is how? Dipping them into the mikveh. We also learned that you're able to dip the shafha into the mikveh against her will. So therefore, no problem. You dip her in the mikveh against her will. Now she comes out of the mikveh. What is she? She's shafha kana'anit. Okay, shafha kana'anit, she has some laws. She's not fully Jewish yet, but she has some laws. And then what? And now you take her to the mikveh a second time, and now you're able to dip her for the sake of what? Freeing her. Umutar babiyad. Even though she didn't accept the Tanyag Mitzvot, according to the Bishimon and Azar, the Eved does not have to accept Tanyag Mitzvot. And that's why this plan will work even when she doesn't accept regular gift. Everybody agrees she has to accept Tanyag Mitzvot. She said, I'm not accepting. No problem. But we're not going to make you a Giyoret right away. We're going to get you to Giyoret, but we're going to go through the back door. We're going to make you a Shifha first. Shifha? I don't want to be a Shifha. Keep quiet, against your will. They take up, they put her into the mikveh. Now she comes out of the mikveh. Someone told, she's a shifha. Now they come along and say, now you're a shifha. Beautiful. The law is to make a shifha Jewish, you dip her in the mikveh again. According to the Bishon, you don't have to accept Tanyag Mitzvot on the shifha. So you stick her with it again. Now she comes and says, I don't want to be Jewish. Too late. You're Jewish already. How did we become Jewish? We took the road of shifha. But Tanakh doesn't hold like that. Tanakh came along and said, we don't have that option. Why didn't Tanakh say we have that option? Because Tanakh holds that even in Eved, when you're dipping them, has to have kavanah to accept upon themselves the Tanyag Mitzvot. So therefore, Tanakh said you don't have the option to do this trick over here. As she says on top, umutar b'miyad alma l'Rabbi Shimon Eved en sarich lekabel b'shat tebilat she'rut u'Rabbanan de lo habet takanta behachi. Rabbanan do not hold. You have this fixed. Amazing. So if we have a mahlok in the Gabed, doesn't even have to accept the Tanyag Mitzvot in the second Tefillah. Amar Rabba, my ta'amad Rabbi Shimon ben El-Azar. What's the reason of Rabbi Shimon ben El-Azar? The Gemara says, Dichtiv. This is by Korban Pesach. Now we can't come out of Pesach so quickly because it's a Sukkot today. So we have to have some mention of Pesach. So what did it say? בכל עבד איש מקנת כסף או כסף ומלתה אותו אז יאכל בו. Let's learn the law about that. Halakha says a person has to eat the Korban Pesach. However, there's restrictions. One restriction is he has to be circumcised. Okay, we know that. But not only he has to be circumcised, if he has avadim, he has slaves in his possession, they must be circumcised. And until they are circumcised, he is not allowed to eat from the Korban Pesach. So therefore, he's got to give them a bit milah. So that's why it says, V'chol Eved Ish, literally means over here, an Eved that belongs to the Ish. Ish is the master. Miknat Kasef, that he bought with Kasef. So it's an Eved Kenani. So it says, Umalta Oto, you will circumcise him, as yochal bo. And then you may eat from the Korban Pesach. So the Gemara makes it to you. Eved ish velo eved isha. What does it mean? V'chol eved ish. But only if the eved is owned by a man, and let's say the eved is owned by a lady. It doesn't apply. The Gemara, of course, it applies. A lady would not be allowed to eat Korban Pesach either until her slaves are circumcised. So what is the eved ish coming to exclude? Ela, says Rabbi Shimon, Ela shel eved ish ata mal ba'al korcho. Ve'i ata mal ben ish ba'al korcho. So Rabbi Shimon will learn that when it says eved ish, it doesn't mean eved belonging to an ish. It means the eved himself who is an ish, meaning he's an adult. And what's the pasuk saying? The pasuk is saying eved ish. If the eved is an ish, you can circumcise him against his will. Even though he's screaming, hey, I don't want to be Jewish. I don't want to accept him as Lord. Doesn't matter. Eved ish atamal oto ba'al korho. However, who can't you do ba'al korho? The atamal ben ish ba'al korho. Ben ish would mean, let's say you have a convert. Guy comes to convert, and he has adult children. You cannot force his adult children to accept upon themselves mitzvot. You cannot circumcise the son of a convert because his father converted against his will. However, with the Eved, you see, you can mal him even against his will. So what is even there? The Mishnah Azad holds that you don't need the consent of the Eved legabe the Brit Milah. Let's read Rashi in the second line. Eved ish velo Eved isha. That's a question. Brit Miha. The isha shekanta abadim velo malu. Let's say a lady bought slaves and she didn't circumcise them. Of course, they're like regular abadim. Hi ish. This word ish is not going on the master. It's going on oved kochavim shemachro ka'eh. It's going on the oved kochavim that sold him. He's an eved ish, which means the oved of the goy himself. Uleme'ute ben ish, as opposed to what? A son. That's an ish. Eved shelakavta min oved kochavim. Eved that you took from an oved kochavim. Ata, now, okay, according to this opinion over here, that she's learning the ish is going on the guy you bought it from. Eved ish, an eved that you bought from a goy. Ata mal ba'al korho. Shel eved, you could mal it even against his will of the eved. Ata mal ben oved kochavim be'alma. But a regular son of a goy, this is the way that she's learning, a regular son of a goy, stop, is a free man. You cannot come along, the lav eved, Baal Korho. You cannot delav Eved Baal Korho. With the Katav Rahmana Ish, Krai Yitel Mute Ben Ish Ma'mina Malta Oto, Baal Korho Mashma. The Ibn Dato, Echi Mimaet Ben Ish. Velo Ketiv Ish Abamina, Hay Eved Lav Me'ute Ben Ita Ela, Igufa Esik Lashmina, Diminat Abadim Akeva Bepesa. Okay, that's the first lesson. But we want to learn the second lesson. The second lesson is the Ikar. Lashon Ahed Ve'ikar. Eved Ish, is the way I explained it when I told you the Gemara. Hachi kamar eved shehu ish. Am I explaining like that? The eved that he himself is an adult. And even though he's an adult, apapishu gadol uben da'at umalta oto ba'al korho. V'i ata mal ben shehu ish ger. If he's the son of a ger, he's an adult also. So we don't say, well, your father converted, so therefore you're 2 for 1. No. הבעל התגייר, אין לו כוח למות בנו גדול בעל כורחו. לגבי בנים כתיב, אמו לו כל זכר, ולא כתיב והוא איש. לגבי עבד כתיב איש למיעוט בן. So therefore, the ish is coming to exclude over here, where it's a ben of a ger. But the point is, what do you see from the Bishop and Azar over here? That when you circumcise the Eved, you do it even against his will. And that's coming to teach us the law of an Ed does not have to accept upon himself the Teriag Mitzvah. V'Rabbanan, what does the rabbi hold? Because the rabbi said, no, the Ed has to do it willingly. So Amar Ula, Keshem She'i Ata Mal, Ben Ish Ba'al Korho, Kach Ata Mal, Eved Ish Ba'al Korho. They learn the exact opposite. They come along and start with the reverse. They say, just like you cannot mal the son of a convert against his will, so too you cannot mal an adult Eved against his will. They go reverse. They start learning it from Ben Ish. Just like you cannot do a Ben Ish, you cannot do a Eved. The Ela, they call the Eved Ish. So what is they call Eved Ish? That sounds like the opposite, that only Eved Ish you can do Ba'al Korho. What do the rabbis do with that? They learn a different law. The person frees his slave. How? Doesn't say you're free. It makes him scared. He announces and declares that his slave is ownerless. He goes free. The Ed Sadiq gets shechnur. He doesn't even need a document of freedom. That's the person we just learned. The Gemara asks, Eved Ish, Velo Eved Isha? Of course not. Ella, what does it mean? Eved sheyesh lo leshut rabo alav karui eved. That means he's called Eved Ish, that he has a master on him. That's called an Eved. However, she'en reshut rabo alav. Why in this? Why doesn't his master have any permission or rights over him? Because he freed him. How did he free him? By making him ifker. And karui Eved. That's not called an Eved. So therefore, according to Rabbanan, we learned for sure you have to do everything willingly by an Eved. You have to dip him willingly to accept his vote. You have to circumcise him willingly to accept his vote. Ella, what are we talking about over here? Eved Ish. When is an Eved called an Eved? When he has an Ish on him, when he has the master on him. But if the master relinquishes his rights, how was the Eved? How was the Ish? I'm sorry, the master, yes. How does he relinquish his rights? If can. Then already he's not considered Eved Ish. And when he goes free automatically, he does not even need a get Shehrut. You read Rashi over here. She says, "Kachi atamal umelta ba'almai v'lo kishai l'khamaleh kiyechi de moditi beben wadin the nami de em megalim bedat ela mirtzon." Fine. Now the Gemara says, "But keep that of Papa." Now the Papa is going to ask a very strong question. Imu de shamatu rabbanan beyifatoa de lo shaycha b'mitzvot, abal eved de shayach b'mitzvot. You want to bring me a proof from the Eshet Yefat Torah. What was the proof? That the Rabbanan came along and said she's got to accept the mitzvot willingly. And if she doesn't accept, you got to wait. So what do you see from over here? And he didn't agree with that trick to dip her as a slave and then dip her again. That means Rabbanan by Eshet Yefat Torah, you need willingly Kabbalat mitzvot. And from there, the Gemara wanted to say, so who had Din? Eved. Rav Papa is saying there's a big distinction between the two. The Yefat is coming from where? From nothing. To mitzvot. But Eved Kenani that's coming already from the mitzvot of a woman. So therefore, maybe you don't need for the second process. Even the rabbis that are strict by Eshet Yefat could be lenient under the modernity. Gemara's question. Look at that. She's lashon abal Eved sheshaha. It's still kama yamin. ונהג עליו מצוות הנוהגות בעבד, איש שעמד לו לצדיק לקבל, who told you? So the Gemara says, Netanya, and I'll show you this distinction. אחד גר, ואחד לוקח עבד, you have someone that's buying an עבד from a goy, which is also a total goy. It's not, מה זה פעיל? שמע מינה, דלוקח So from here you see what? The lady with long nails, according to the Torah, is uncomely. Today it's the opposite. Today ladies go their nails long, thinking that's beautiful. But according to Rabbi Akiva, long nails is considered this guy. I'm just talking about the quasi fruit. So now you have over here the shita of Rabbi Akiva. Okay. We have a ra'ayah to Rabbi Eliezer that it means what? From the pasuk at Shemuel. Why wouldn't it say pasuk at Shemuel? Mefiboshet ben Shaul yarad likrat hamelech. Mefiboshet, the son of Shaul, came to see the king. This was when King David was running away from Avshalom. So Mefiboshet wanted to show that he supports David. So therefore, he acted in a way of avelut, as long as David was being exiled. So the pasuk says, when he greeted David, lo asa raglav, velo asa sefamo. What does it mean? Lo asa raglav. He did not make his toenails. Velo asa sefamo. He did not make his beard. Now, what does asiyah over there mean? My asiyah ha'abara. That means he did not remove his mustache. He kept his beard, meaning he grew it, and he did not remove his toenails. So then you see, let them grow. So therefore, when the Torah comes along and says ve'aseta, ve'aseta means to remove. Mefiboshet lo asa, he did not remove. And therefore, you see over here that there's a proof that when it says asa legabe the nails, it's referring to remove them. Now, why according to the which you have to remove a nail? Let's see, you have to say it's not making her ugly. It's not making her uncomely. It's not the katuv. They want the nails to come off. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Ubacheta et abiya ve'et ima. So it says, and she sits and she cries. What does she cry for? For her mother and her mother and father and mother. Rabbi Eliezer omer, aviha mamash. Ima mamash. Yeah, she's actually crying because she now is going to lose her biological parents. Why? Because now she is going to have to leave her parents' house, and she's going to now have to go become Jewish. So therefore, they give her a chance to separate. So she'll accept it, so willingly. So therefore, they let her cry. But they wanted to convert. So they don't convert her right away. They let her cry for a month, or whatever it is. We'll see how long, for her mother and father. And now it's easier. She's separated already. Now she can become Jewish. Rabbi Akiva omer, abiya ve'ima su avodah zara. That's referring to that she cried because they're forcing her now to leave her religion. And she was originally what? Ovedet avodah zara. And they would want to make it easier for her to become Jewish. So they let her mourn the loss of her avodah. How do you know that avodah zara is called a mother and a father? They come along and say to the tree, you are my father. And they go to the rock and they say, At yiladatnu. And therefore, you see that what avodah zara is considered like the father over here. Now, that is the mahlok in the pasuk over here. Now, is there enough kamina between this? Bottom line, she's crying. So what's the difference if she's crying for her biological father or she's crying because of the avodah zara? She has to cry. What's the enough kamina? So the Mefarshim say, let's say her parents died already.
Or converted.
Or very good. Or her parents were converted already. Yeah. According to the Rabbi Eliezer, that's it. She doesn't have to cry. She doesn't have to. She doesn't need to separate from biological parents. However, if you're going to hold according to Rabbi Akiva, she still has to cry to separate from her religion, from her avodah zara. That would be a nafkamina. And it says, how long does she sit in this stage for? Yerach yamim. Yeah, but it says, how long is yerach yamim? Yerach is b'lashon yerayah. Yerayah is the cycle of the moon. That's a month. Shiloshim yom, 30 days. Rabbi Shimon ben Azar omer, Tish'im yom, 90 days. Where do you get 90 days from? Yerach Shiloshim yom. Yerach we know is a month. That's 30 days. Yamim says Yerach Yamim. That's keneged the first year now, which is another 30. That's shiloshim. And then it says ve'harken. And then after what? Shiloshim, after another 30. So you have yerach, yamim, ve'harken. Therefore, that comes harken. And that comes and teaches us 90. But keep the Rabina. Rabina says, what are you talking about? Ema yerach shiloshim. Yamim shiloshim. Ve'harken kihanen. Which means, maybe it just means after the 60. After the 60. Or another 60. And then maybe it's 120. Because the harken is after what you just waited. You waited 60. The harken, another 60. So maybe it's 120. Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's another 100, maybe it's 120. So therefore, the Gemara says, in economy, that's a good kasha. That's a good kasha. Okay, so then we have 2 or 3 potential opinions over here. We have a 30, we have a 90, and then we have the question on the 90. Why'd you stop it at 90? The 90 could actually be 120. Tanu Rabbanan. Now, new point. Question is like this. When a person normally buys an Eved Kanani, the Eved Kanani has to become Jewish or start the process at least. So what do right away? They give him milah and they throw him into the mikveh. And now he follows the laws of at least a lady. And then eventually when they free him, he becomes full-fledged Jewish. So the question over here is, are you allowed to keep avadim in your house that are not circumcised? That's a big question over there because we never see abadim like that. Either abadim are accepted to be Jewish or we don't accept them. That's the Gemara says. Tanu Rabbanan, mekayimim abadim she'enam malin devrei Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, so therefore, even though he didn't mekayer, he didn't do any of the process yet, he's still a full-fledged Yishmael, a goy. You're allowed to keep him. Okay, and what does the other rabbi say? No way, you're not allowed to keep him. And the Akiva is going to learn it from Avraham Abinu Alav Hashem was forced to immediately circumcise on the day he circumcised himself. He had to circumcise all his avadim. He did not have the option to not circumcise his slaves. That's going to be the mahloket. So the Gemara says, Amar le Rabbi Yishmael. Ishmael says, Hareu omer, v'nafesh ben amatecha. The pasuk is talking about Shemirat Shabbat. So we know a Jew has to keep Shabbat. I'll talk about it. Not only does the Jew have to keep Shabbat, his servants, his avadim, have to also keep Shabbat. And what does the pasuk say? V'nafesh ben amatecha. And who's ben amatecha according to Rabbi Ishmael? An eved shelo nimod. So therefore, what do you see over here? That there's a situation that you have an eved that was not circumcised. And that's what the Torah says out of his way and say that even though he was not circumcised, he still has to keep the Shor. He cannot do melacha for you on Shabbat. That she says, Behai the eved arel keti. Now you're going to ask, Rabbi, how do you know this is talking about an eved arel? Maybe someone in an eved that is circumcised. Wait, the Gemara will explain. Be patient, please. Amar le, Rabbi Akiva says no. ולוקח עבד בין השמשות ולא הספיק למולו הכתוב מדבר. Rabbi Akiva will say, really, you're not allowed to keep an eved uncircumcised. So why is the Torah talking about Shemirat Shabbat, the uncircumcised abadim? Because this is a specific case. You bought the eved ben shemashot on Friday. So there's no time to give him a brit milah. In a kanameh, Sunday morning, first thing, brit milah. The only reason why you couldn't, why don't you give him a brit milah on Shabbat? Because the milah of the abadim is not docheh Shabbat. But the point is, if you have no proof from this pasuk that you could have a situation of an eved that's not nimol. No, the only reason why he's not nimol is because, again, there was no choice. You could not, Malam, as she says, Ben Hashemashot shel Erev Shabbat v'lo yispeak lamulo u'mazhiro ha'katuv lerabo al avdo. The command is on the master that what he has to make sure that the eved lanuach b'yom ha'machorat v'lo al Shabbat haba'ah. Exactly, which means don't wait till next week. He's got to keep this Shabbat. Why? He's really got to mal him this week. What about a case of an Eved that was mal already? That's a different pasuk. The man yanua abdecha. So we have two pasukim. One pasuk talks about an Eved that was mal. Then we have even a case where it was circumcised. And then we have a case where he was not nimol, he was not circumcised. And the hadush over is not because he's allowed to stay like that, because you had no choice. Because you're born in, exactly, because you're born in Ben Shemashur. Ben Amatecha. Everybody holds that pasuk of V'yinafesh ben Amatecha be'ebed arel ketiv. It's talking about an ebed that is what? Uncircumcised. Me'em mashma. How do you know that? The Tanya. V'yinafesh ben Amatecha be'ebed arel hakatuv medaber. Ata omer be'ebed arel o eno ela be'ebed mahul. How do you know? Maybe it's talking about an ebed that is actually circumcised. Kishu omer leman yanuach abdecha ba'amatecha kamocha. It already mentions the word abdecha. Abdecha ba'amatecha kamocha. That's talking about ebed mahul amu. That's talking about an ebed that is mahul. And therefore, must be the other pasuk is referring to what? Ma'ani mekayem v'yinafish ben amatecha ve'ebed arel. Very good. So that's how we prove that it's referring to Ebed Arel. Now we get to the next one. The pasuk also says, who has to keep the Shabbat? The ger, the ger. Oh, I would have thought it means the convert, but the Gemara says no. Ze ger toshav. Now, what is a ger toshav? A ger toshav is a goy. All he accepted upon himself, this goy, is not to worship avodah zarah. Even though it's one of the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noah, but he made a special kabbalah that he's not going to worship avodah zarah. And the pasuk is saying he has to keep Shabbat now. The world doesn't have to keep Shabbat. He's not Jewish. Just because he accepted upon himself not to worship avodah zarah, so that she comes over and says a tremendous hadush over here. Ger toshav shekibel alav shelo la'avod avodat kochavim. However, he's still eating nevelot. He's not Jewish. You know why? The mehalel את השבת כעובד עבודת כוכבים. When it's mehalel Shabbat, it's like he's worshiping avodah zarah. And therefore, since this guy accepted upon himself not to do avodah zarah, so they're going to be mehalel Shabbat. That's tantamount to being oved, which you don't have to go bow down to the moon and the sun and the stars or the trees or the stone to worship avodah zarah. You could come and not do any of those and still be considered what? An oved kochavim, oved avodah zarah, and that's through chas v'shalom chilul Shabbat. Now the Gemara says, "Ve'aged ze ger toshav." Now you asked, maybe the ger is talking about a convert. Ata omer ze ger toshav. Or eno ela ger tzedek. Maybe it's talking about a regular righteous convert. Kishu omer v'gerecha asher b'sharecha. In the pasuk after it says gerecha asher b'sharecha, so ger is mentioned. Are ger tzedek amur. Amari mekayem ve'ager. That must be talking about ze ger toshav. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Now we get to a new case. Yoshua ben Levi teaches us. Alokeya Eved min Oved Kochavim. Okay, the guy bought an Eved from a goy. Velo ratza lamun. Okay, here it is. The guy does not want no mal. I'm not taking a circumcision. Begalgel imo ad shenim asar chodesh. So you try to convince him for 12 months. So for 12 months, you try to, convince him and explain to him why it's, kedai to go under the wings of the Shekhinah. Now, obviously, we learned above that according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, that even if you do it against his will, it's okay. And even according to Hakamim, we came out, if you remember at the end, that an Eved Kenani, you don't need him to accept the mitzvot willingly. So therefore, what do you mean Megalgel for 12 months? They should tell the guy, he comes along and says, listen, I'm not interested. Not interested? Doesn't matter that you're not interested. Drown him in the waterboard him in the mikveh. So the question that is over here, why is the Gemara saying over here מגלגל עליו 12 חודש. The Gemara is saying on the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi that if he does not want to convert, they should still try to convince him and not do it against his will. And the reason is that even though a conversion against his will helps, but maybe midrabbanan, it's assured to do it against his will, because what's going to happen? Big Hadusha ben Rishonim said, he's going to do it unwillingly. He might trip the master up because he really doesn't want to be Jewish. And now he might bring the master not kosher food. Or he might do things that are forbidden. So it's not to your advantage to have this guy joining the Jewish religion against his will. So that's why even those opinions that were lenient, but that's from the law. But with Rabbanan, the Biyushim to be saying they should still try to get his permission, to get his approval. And now the Gemara says, Lo man, let's say after 12 months, he doesn't want him out. He doesn't want to circumcise himself. Oziel, Mukhron, Oved Kochavim. That's it. Sell him back. Sell him back to Oved Kochavim. You can't keep him. Amaru Rabbanan Kamed Papa. So they said, the students said this in front of Rav Papa. Keman, who is this going like? The law can be Akiva. This cannot be going like Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva, the Rabbi Akiva Amar, and Mekayim. You remember we just learned? Rabbi Akiva said we're not allowed to keep uncircumcised abadim in our house. So therefore, what do you mean 12 months? According to Rabbi Akiva,
Not even a day.
exactly, not even a day. You gotta get rid of him. So therefore, for sure, it's not going like Rabbi Akiva. And therefore, they only mentioned Rabbi Akiva. Now, they didn't mention Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael was the one that argued. Rabbi Ishmael said that we're allowed to keep abadim. Now, the Chaura, you're right. No, the one that argued on Rabbi Akiva was Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael was the one that taught us earlier that you're allowed to keep abadim that are not circumcised. Now, according to Rabbi Ishmael, he didn't give us a time limit. So, seemingly, this is not going according to him either. This is saying you can only keep them for 12 months. Rabbi Ishmael didn't give us a time limit. Rabbi Ishmael says you're allowed to keep abadim that are not circumcised. So why did the Papa only say, or the student say, it's not going like Rabbi Akiva? It's not going like Rabbi Ishmael either. Ella, you have to say that even according to Ishmael, that he said you could keep them, we put there may be a limit. That it has to be, after a certain amount of time, you have to convert. According to Rabbi Akiva, no, can't keep them at all. Masechet, according to Ishmael, you can keep them, but maybe with the banan like we learned above, you have to give them above at least 12 months. So it can be at least like Rabbi Ishmael. That's a law from the Torah.
So then maybe up to 12 months, because by the time,
Assuming that you bought them at a Pesach or the day after Pesach, the maximum. Now the Gemara comes along and says, Amadu Papa. The Papa says, no. Afidu tema Rabbi Akiva. We can even say what? That this is going like Rabbi Akiva. Hani mili echadelo Pascal milte. When did Rabbi Akiva say that you're not allowed to hold an Ebed who's not circumcised? That's when you bought him, he did not accept upon himself to convert. He was kicking and screaming at the time that you bought him. So that guy said, listen, the guy we see already, his projection is not going the right way. You got to get rid of him. But where he stopped his ways, which means at the time that you bought him, at least verbally, he said, I'll convert. So then, Pascha, already it's considered he stopped his initial ways of Avodah Zarah, even though he didn't do anything. But the fact that he verbally committed, even Rabbi Akiva will say in that case, you can give him 12 months. Midrashi says, okay, if the guy never accepted to convert, he never made a break from his non-Jewish status. Exactly. At the time that you bought him, the guy said, "Amen, I'll consider it." Then after he got sold, he changed his mind. Then the Galgelin, why? Because already see there's potential with this guy. Shema Yazor Bi'Praseh. That's Lashon Mori. Shnaharina, Harimidi de En Mikami Mekadelo Pasak Lemiltev. That when it says En Mikami, that we don't keep the Eved, Ekadelo Pasak Lemiltev, we didn't stop. Shemikaimin, stop. But Ekad the Pasak, the Amar Lo, Hareni Megalgil Mechayid Bet Chodesh, Im Not Tamud, Im Kol Kamutada Migabe, Kesachim Ram, which means there it's going on the master who bought it. If he bought him stam and never said, I'm going to take you for 12 months and try to convince you, then already you got to get rid of him immediately. But if at the time that you bought him, you told him, listen, know that I'm going to buy you, but I'm going to try to convince you for 12 months, then already, since you bought him with the intention and you told him, then Lashon, the second Lashon, she says, that's considered pasak. Pasak means you stipulated. If you stipulated with him at the beginning that you're going to convince him, then already you have a chance to keep him. If you didn't make that stipulation at the time of the sale, then according to Akiva, you would have to get rid of him immediately. Now the Gemara says, Amar Rav Kahana, Amirte l'shema'ata, kamed Rav Zvid midhar de'ah. I said over this Hadush of Rav Papa, in front of who Rav Zvid from the Harde'ah. V'amadi says, wait, comes out according to Rabbi Akiva, we have a way now to keep an Eved uncircumcised for at least 12 months. If that's the case, Yacheki ka'amar le Rabbi Akiva v'lokeya ben hashemashot l'shaneh leha. You remember we had a pasuk that said, "Be in the fish ben amatecha behagir." And what were we talking about over there? An uncircumcised Eved. And when we said that an uncircumcised Eved has to keep Shabbat, and we said, what do you mean? According to Rabbi Akiva, how do you have an uncircumcised Eved? You're not allowed to keep it uncircumcised. So we said, no, it's a case where you bought the Eved ben hashemashot. What do you got to come on to that for? Say very simple. It's a case where the Eved accepted upon himself at the time of the purchase, and therefore it doesn't have to be circumcised. You have 12 months. Why do you have to give an odd case of that you only bought him ben hashemashot where he was not able to be circumcised? Take a regular case. You bought him. He accepted upon himself to convert. Then he changed his mind. And according to me, you have 12 months. So you can have a case of an uncircumcised slave in your possession. We're not giving a case where you bought him ben hashemashot. The Gemara says, Hadar mitre tameh kaman. You're right. We gave one of two reasons. We could give this reason also. We just gave one example of buying a ben hashemashot. This reason would also apply according to Rabbi Akiva. That she says the pasad the mitre diakon lekayimo kol yom chodesh. Shalach Ravin b'shemed Rabbi Eli v'chol Rabbotai amru li b'shemo eze hu eved arel shemutar lekayemo. What is this type of eved that's arel, that's uncircumcised, that you're allowed to keep him? Ze shelekachor rabo al menat shelo lamulo. Which means you have a case, let's say the seller, the mocher, made a tenai with the koner, that I'm selling it on the condition that you don't convert it. That's what he did. He said, I don't want you to convert him over here. And so the Gemara says that that's the case over there when we say that you can keep him like that, because that was the stipulation that you made. Keman, who's that going like? This is your question. The law can be Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, Amar and Mekayemim. What are you talking about? You can't keep a slave according to Akiva under no circumstances. So how can you keep him over here just because that was the original stipulation? So therefore, the Gemara comes along, and then the Chaura, this goes against Rabbi Ishmael as well. The Mefashim will ask, because according to Rabbi Ishmael, you're allowed to keep an Eved in all cases. Not only when you simply stipulated. According to Ishmael, it's lenient every time. So the Chaura have the same question according to Ishmael. Because Ishmael said you're allowed to keep Amarim that are not circumcised. I don't care whether it was a stipulation or not. So why are you saying it's only not like Rabbi Akiva? It's not like Rabbi Yishmael. So again, we can always answer Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael was talking about the Doraita. The Doraita, it's okay, but with Rabbanan, he'll say you need to, you need to circumcise it. And can, unless there was maybe a stipulation. And then what Rabbi Eli over here is talking about with Rabbanan. That with Rabbanan, when there was a stipulation, that we're going to say that. Wait, but according to even according to Ishmael, it's forbidden with Rabbanan to hold an Eved that was not circumcised. The reason is because you don't want him. The reason why they don't like to have an Eved that's not circumcised is because the Rishonim explained it's because he's going to continue in his goy ways and he's going to trip you up. Like we said, he's going to serve you food that's not kosher. He's going to do things that are going to ruin you up. So therefore, according to the Ishmael, you're not going to. According to the Torah law, it's okay to keep the Eved. But the Rabbanan, they don't want you to keep him over there. And on this, Rabbi Eli said that even though with Rabbanan it's asur, but if there was a stipulation, the Ishmael will agree that you could keep him because there was a stipulation in the purchase. That works for the Ishmael. Again, the Ishmael said, "B'deoraita, it's mutar." With Rabbanan, so he doesn't trip you up. We don't want you to leave him uncircumcised. Unless there was a stipulation at the time of the purchase, even the Ishmael will agree the rabbis were lenient. But Rabbi Akiva, you can't say that. Because Rabbi Akiva said it's always forbidden to leave an Eved uncircumcised. So how can you come and tell me now that it's only talking about if you stipulated, you can keep him uncircumcised? What do you mean? Rabbi Akiva holds it's asur. Asur is asur. We can even say that this is going like Rabbi Akiva. When did Rabbi Akiva say it's forbidden? That's only talking about where they didn't make the condition. What he's selling. What should I tell you? When they made a condition, and therefore, that pasuk that's coming to tell us that it's a mitzvah to circumcise Amadim is talking about a stam Eved that was bought without any conditions. But if there's a condition, what are you going to do? It's a big condition according to that opinion. Now, what's the reason? I would say, don't listen to it. The guy came along and said, I'm selling you my Eved as long as you don't circumcise it, don't convert it. Why do you have to listen? So the Mefarshim say is because if you're going to circumcise them, the sale is going to be nullified because you didn't follow the condition. If you're not going to follow the condition, so therefore you had that's a catch-22. So he's not Eved. He's not your Eved to circumcise. So therefore you're in a bind. So therefore you can't touch it according to it.
Why do they let them buy it? Rabbi, why do they let them buy it in the first place then? Someone's selling you Hametz on tradition that you don't sell it on Pesach, or that you have it over Pesach. You can't, we're not going to let the guy keep that Hametz.
Who says that this was like a Tehillah?
He's buying it.
No, I know he bought it. But the case is that way we're telling him to go buy it. The case over here is Shilakaho. He bought it already. Nobody told him to buy it under that case. And if we would ask the rabbi, we'd tell him don't buy it. But now that he bought it under that condition, now the question is, what do we do?
We can't say that the sale is a sale.
Sale is a sale. The sale is it. Wait, there's nothing you sued intrinsically in the sale. Nothing you sued in the sale. It's a sale now has a condition in it that will create a problem. So therefore, the question is, can you leave that problem? So according to the Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva will come along and say you have to respect that Bidi Abad sale that you did, which nobody would have told you to do it, because otherwise, by not following it, you're going to undo it. By undoing it, he's not a convert to start off with. So therefore, you're in a catch-22. But in Hanami, if you go ask the rabbis, of course they would tell you, don't put yourself in such a situation. Why would you buy an Evan? It'll only bring problems. I think there's only two about the Abad. Even if you look at the way the Eli said it. זה שלקחו רבו על מנת שלא למולו. שלקחו. didn't say מותר לאדם לקחת עבד על מנת שלא למות. Okay. Now the Gemara comes along in one more point and says, Amar Rav Kahana, Amita l'shemate kamed Rav Zvid min harde'ah, Amali ihachi. If you're coming to tell me that we have a case according to the Rabbi Akiva where a slave can be in your possession uncircumcised, namely in a case where you bought it with that condition that the Mocher came along and said, I'm not to circumcise. Ki kamar Rabbi Akiva belokeach eved ben hashemashot. Why do you have to give that case of ben hashemashot? Velo speak lamon. You didn't have time to circumcise. Lishni leha. Let him say this case over here. You have a case over here. Gemara Kadoga says, "V'letamech lishane lehach." According to Rabbi Akiva, we had the other case. We had the other case that you could have brought, like we said, where he made a condition initially to convert when you bought him, and you didn't give that case. So just like you didn't give that case, what do we answer above? You gave one of two. But it says, now we'll say he gave one of not only two reasons, he gave one of three reasons. With there's three legitimate reasons that we can say. Either he bought the Eved Ben Hashem Mashur, or either he bought him with conditions that he will convert, and then you're able to, then he changes once you have 12 months. That's where you could have him. Or it's where the master sold him, you can't convert him. And therefore, that's another case where the Rabbi Akiva will say that he can remain. Now again, based on what I would have said, I would have said that based on what I just told Benny, I'm not going to give you a B'diavad case. I'm going to talk about cases that are the Kataila. Why would I give you buying the Kataila Ben Hashem Ashot? Okay, no issue to do that. Or buying an Eved that accepts upon himself to be a Ger, there's no problem with that. The way I'm explaining you that buying an Eved, what the guy's telling you, that you don't give, you shouldn't do that with Kataila. So maybe the reason why they didn't bring that case is because we're not talking about the B'diavad case, but I don't see anybody over here bring me that. Bring me that reason over there. But nonetheless, this is what I'm saying. Second Tevila. Yes. It's a Brit Milah will be dangerous for him to. Yeah. No, which means if he buys a Ben Hashem Ashot, you're not able to circumcise him not because of the wound, you're not able to circumcise because of Shabbat. Right. Then what? Then Sunday morning you'll circumcise him. Correct. And then you have to wait till the Makkah gets better. Right. And then you do the mikveh. You're right. So he won't become Jewish till medieval. Yeah. No, you have to circumcise him immediately, but you can't put him in the mikveh until the circumcision heals. That's a fact. We learned that yesterday. Otherwise, it'll be sakana. Yativ Rabbi Hanina Bar Papeh. Okay, Rabotai. Rabbi Yitzhak Nafha. Akil Ad Rabbi Yitzhak Nafha. So the rabbis were sitting on the porch, on the marpeset of Rabbi Yitzhak Nafha. V'yadveh v'ka'amle. Okay, there was a city in Eretz Yisrael. Velo ratzu abadeha lamud. The abadim, they didn't want to circumcise themselves. V'gilgilu immahim ad shenem asar chodesh. What happened? 12 months going back and forth, trying to convince them. Hazru umachrum le'ovdei kochavim. After 12 months, see you later. They sold them back to ovdei kochavim. Keman, what shita are they following? Ki haitana, they're following the Tana that we mentioned, the Tanya. Lokeyach ebed min ha'oved kochavim. Ve'lo ratza lamud megalgel imo ad 12 chodesh. Lo mal, chozer u'mochro le'oved kochavim. That's it, you sell them back. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar omer, en mashin oto be'eretz Yisrael. Now, if this is in Eretz Yisrael, he doesn't want to circumcise himself, return to sender. Why? Exactly, because he's going to be mitameh all the taharot. Now, why is he going to mitameh all the taharot? He's a goy. A goy doesn't have tum'ah. Achamim made a goy like a tum'at zav. They put a tum'ah on him. Therefore, we're worried that if you leave as a goy now, and he's in your house, he's going to touch the terumah, and therefore you're going to keep him in Eretz Yisrael because over there you have terumah, they're all right. And if he's not going to circumcise himself, you're going to have a problem. But again, according to Tanakama, it sounds like you can even keep him in Eretz Yisrael, and he's not worried about the problem of touching the terumah. Midrashi, she says over here, Kset Taharot, David Mechavot. Look at that. So we treat him like that. So the Rabbi Shimon says that in Israel, we're not going to let the situation take place. We don't want to wait 12 months. Let's say this is happening on the border, which means the border of Eretz Israel to Chutz La'aretz. Even Tanakama says, Mashin Oto Kol Ikar. We don't leave them at all. Why? Shema Yishma Hadabar V'yelech V'yomah L'Hamero Obed Kochavim. What's the matter? We're worried about spies. We're worried about espionage. What's going to happen? They're going to go and tell the Goyim on the other side of the border about our plans or vulnerability. And as a result, what? They're going to come along and attack us. So therefore, if it's a border, we don't want to let Goyim that are uncircumcised live on the border because it'll compromise the security of this other country. Look at that Shina Sefar. Right, the marker, which is the border. Again, we're concerned that it'll affect the Sakanab Israel. Regular cities, you have Hefset Tarot. But Isuchal Sefar, that's a problem over there because of Sakana. Tanya, Rabbi Hananya beno shel Rabban Gamliel Omer, Bepenema Gerim Bizman Hazeh Me'unim. Why do we find Gerim, converts? This time, after the destruction, Me'unim, they live a hard life. B'yisurin ba'in alehem. And they have a lot of affliction. Because when they were goyim, they didn't keep the 7 Noachide laws. And therefore, as they converted, they're getting Yisurin in order to mechaper for their delinquency in the Zayin Mitzvot. Rashi.
ועד השעה לא התקרבו מיני, ופורענות כנוזה להם לעתיד לבוא. אבל כשמתגיירים נפרעים מהם כדי למראה חובתם.
And she says a tremendous hadush over here. Why did God punish the Goyim when they were Goyim for not keeping the 7 mitzvot? Because Borei Olam doesn't punish the Goyim ba'olam hazeh. Let them get their reward in this world. Lishamedam ade'ad. And then Borei Olam punishes them la'atid lavo. Once he becomes Jewish, now it's almost as a chesed. Rabbi Olam says you could pay 10 cents on the dollar in Olam Hazeh for your avirot instead of having to pay full price. La'atid lavo. So everybody Olam gives them the punishment here in order to get saved from the punishment. And that's something that a convert has to know, that when he converts, there's going to be there might be a consequence. I don't know why the Gemara has to say. Why is it only Bizman Hazeh? What's the Bizman Hazeh? What the Seva Mitzvot?
Good times and bad times.
No, but the point is the Seva Mitzvot B'nei Noah applied even from Adam Rishon. So if they kept it, they kept it. They didn't keep it. It shouldn't matter what period of history this is. There's a reason for this. No, but why? And when the temple is standing, unless they get kapara.
They don't bring a korban. They're supposed to bring a korban when they become gerim. Now they don't. The korban is what? Maybe the korban is in a chatzar. I don't even know. But they have to bring korban.
Also, the korban maybe atones for what they did when they were.
I'm just saying now, but I'm saying maybe.
Okay, now that would be a if that was a kapara korban, that would explain it because then you have a bit of mikdash, so you can't bring a korban. Rabbi Yosef Omer. ger shenitkayer. Obviously, there's an argument. What we're just going to say now. Kekatan shenolad dameh. It's like a baby that was just born. And therefore, the point is he has no past. So you can't get him on what he did when he was a goy. It's a different guy. You understand? Also, the question then is, why do they get hard life? אלא מפני מה הם מעונים, משהם בקיאים בדקדוקי מצוות כישראל, because they're not following the mitzvot with all its details like Israel. They're amateurs, so they don't know the rules. They don't know the dikdukim. They're not bedekdek, and therefore, because they're not careful, so therefore they're going to get punished. Now that the nafkamina between the two is nafkamina will be a Jew that is not medakdek. If you're saying that the reason why they're going the gerim me'onim is because they didn't keep the Sheva mitzvot, okay, now that's only applies to them. But if you hold because they're not medakdek, so therefore that's a reason that doesn't only apply to gerim. What about a Jew who's not medakdek? A Jew that's not medakdek should even be more liable, because the goy at least has an excuse to say, "Hey, listen, I'm new kid on the block. I don't know everything." I still think going to hold him responsible. So a Jew that was an old kid on the block, so therefore he has less of an excuse to come along and say, "Hey, listen, I'm not medakdek. I don't know the dikdukim." That's the reason according to Rabbi Yosef. Abba Hanan Omer Mishum Rabbi Elazar, לפי שאין עושים מאהבה אלא מיראה. Because they serve God out of fear of Gehinnom. As she says, מיראה. Okay, and therefore that's already not an ultimate service. So Sfot comes along and says, שאין עושים מאהבה אלא מיראה, בפרק נותן משמע ששניהם רעים. פרק השם לשבח. ואומר לי, דמאהבת המקום ומיראת המקום, depends what. If you're doing it for fear of God and love of God, avu tarvayu l'shebach. That's great. There's no problem with that. If the person says, what's motivating you? Mirat hamakom. Mirat hamakom is fantastic. Ahavat hamakom is fantastic. However, me'ahavat adam. But if you're doing it because to please people, or mirat adam, or fear of people, tarvayu the giriuta, then that's even the ahava is going to be bad. Or a person, let's say, is being motivated because he loves the reward. He comes along and says, "Oh, if I'm not going to get reward, I regret everything I did." So that type of guy we learned is obviously not good. He's only doing it to get reward. Over here, we have a ahava l'shebach, which is he's doing an ahava tamakom, and yirah we're saying is the giriuta v'matzidumat ibcha. The Gemara could have said or tarvayu the giriuta or tarvayu the shebach. Over here, the Gemara is splitting it up. Which means the Gemara could have said both the giriuta. He's doing me'abat beriyot or me'abat schar or me'irat adam. But the Gemara came along and gave he's doing it me'ahava, which is those are the good guys that do it me'ahava, but they're not doing it me'ahava. They're only doing it in osim me'ahava, which is a good thing. Ella, they're doing it mi'irah. Fine. Now the Gemara says, "Harim omri sheshahu or sheshihu atzmam nikanes ta'at kalpei shechina." Amazing, unbelievable answer. The Gemara is saying, basically, what took you so long? The Gemara is saying they delayed. What took you so long to come under the wings of the Shekhinah? That's why they get suffering. Now, there's definitely no obligation to convert. Nobody's going to say
once in your mind you come and resolve yourself,
Right, that's what it seems. Then already you shouldn't make any delay over there. He says over here, "Badai en chiyuv al nochri lehitkayem, v'afafi ken ledat acherim, yesh al nochri shegila et ha'emet." Like you said, once he revealed the emet, that's it. So there's no delay. You gotta convert right away. Ad shegila et ha'emet, no is the rezli kanes. He wasn't, he didn't go fast enough to convert. So those are the reasons why the gerim have yisurim. Amar Rabbi Abahu. Vetima Rab Hanina me'ekena. Where do we know this concept that a person should not delay? Yishalem Ashbairut, which is the classic paradigm. We're going to Shavuot already. That's it. The day after Pesach, we're ready in Shavuot. Yishalem Adonai pa'olech uti maskutek shelema me'im Adonai Elohei Yisrael asher bat lahasot v'gomer. So the pasuk over here says, why is she blessing her? Why is Boaz blessing Ruth? Because Asher bat, that you came without delay. Asher bat lachasot. You didn't. Once you saw the truth, you didn't question it. You didn't delay the middle. You came to cover yourself and protect yourself under the wings of the Shekhinah, which sounds like it just could have said Asher hasid, which is Asher bat, and that's. Could be that's a similar inyan that you see by Yitro. The pasuk says, "Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midian." So that she says, "Bashmu'a Shama Uba." That she adds the word Uba. You say, "Bashmu'a Shama." What did he have to convert? No, once Yitro came to the conclusion that the only emet is the Kadosh Baruch Hu, so therefore Shemu'ah Shama Uba. He didn't delay. So we see Inyan of Yitro also. These are the two examples of Geret Tzedek. Yitro is the Get Tzedek on the man's side, and Ruth is the Get Tzedek. Interesting, both have root in their shortish of the words. We explained why. Because Ruth is Gematria 606. Because a goy before they convert only has 7 mitzvot. And they're accepting upon themselves Taryag, which is an additional 606 mitzvot. So therefore, that's why the Gemara explains in Berachot, they didn't change Ruth's name. Normally, when a convert converts, they change the name. Her name was Ruth, but she was a Goyah. Because you know what? That's a good name. Ruth is a good name. And the same thing with Yitro. Yitro is a good name because it has in it the inyan of Yud, which they get Hashem, when I said the Berot, and it has the Ruth in it, which is 606. So therefore, those names are suitable names for the convert. But both have in common what? Ma Shemu'ah Shama Uba, and the root also is what? Asher bat Nachasot. That's why Shavuot, the parasha that we read on Shavuot is what? Yitro, and the Megillah that we read on Shavuot is what? Is Ruth, which comes and teaches us what? That the sword of Shavuot is once you realize that something is emet. Now that could be even Jewish people already. Today we learned the new halakha. Once you revealed a new truth, now the question is, yesterday you weren't held liable. You didn't know it. Now you know it. Now you learned something. Now you have to come along and do it. Oh, now you want to delay? So now already you have the same punishment of the Gerim, God forbid. Because the Gerim, once they have the revelation of the truth, finish, you have to jump on it. They're not going to hold them liable. Yitro was searching. During the years of his searching, he's not liable. During his search, he's off the hook. But once he came to the conclusion, when he finished the Rolodex, he got to Z, and all that was Sheker, that's it. What are you waiting for? Similarly, when a Jew comes along and learns something, and he comes along and says, wow, I'm 50 years old, I never learned this before. I'm talking about, no problem. You're not going to be held liable for what you didn't know. But starting today, that the truth was revealed to you, whenever you hear something that's truthful, you have to inculcate it and you have to adopt it and put it into the person's lifestyle. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.
It said, Kibel Malin Oto Miyad. And the Gemara said over there, maybe that's why he gets punished. Once he accepts, once he's mikabel, if they don't do the milah right away, he gets a avon for waiting. Not that. In other words, the one of waiting is only once he's mekabel. Once he accepts he's going to convert, he has to do it right away. By delaying, that's why he gets punished. Sounds like.
One second. Saying something here.
And Zion on the bit.
So you're saying a big nafkamina. You're saying that the guy can know the truth of the Torah and everything, but that doesn't hold him responsible. It's only when he made the move.
Yeah, because the Gemara says and the Gemara says, "My tama shahuyem zvado mashahim."
But that's something that's going on. But that's something that's going on the guy, on the owner, or on the who's that going on? Malino to Bedin. Bedin has an obligation to Malam Miyah.
Maybe not. Maybe because of since he was mekabel, we had to do it right away.
So who's the owner on? Who's the owner on? On him, you mean?
Well, we're helping him not to delay. He accepted it right.
And what's the so then what you're saying? It's only after what? After what? After he
once he accepts. If he delays from that point
right.
on.
So isn't the time of acceptance the time that he came to the truth? No, it can come. You're saying it can come after that.
He accepted to take it. Once he accepts it, from that point on, every minute of delay, it's a.
So you're saying that's a later point that I'm talking about.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, I hear you. Hazak about it.
The Gemara doesn't make that distinction though. It says all the Gedim get that, even the ones that did it right away, even though they were Mal Miyad. According to this, it'll be that only some Gedim had a hard time.
Well, that's true. It's quite, even according to my opinion, it's true. It's only Gedim that came to the truth and they didn't act on it. That's the point. No matter how you learn it, there's a delay. Not all Gedim. Ruth will not get that punishment. Yitro will not get that punishment. And that's why it says, Yishalem Hashem pa'olech, utim askutek sherema, which you didn't delay. Implying that if the Ged does it ASAP, in the Chanami, he's saved from this honest. It's just that, if they don't, they get it. But I think that's what, no matter how you learn, there's going to be it. All right, Abotai, tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's Mem Tet. Bezat Hashem will start the shiur. I'll let you know, probably before 8 o'clock, probably like at 7:30, 7:35, but I'll text you. Hazak Baruch. Abotai, if you can make it to the levaya of our good friend Mr. Charles Saka, big man we lost to Shaya Ben Nora. It's a big mitzvah to attend. We lost the giant today. Baruch Adonai Le'olam Amen.
Okay, is there any problem going to public finding right now?
No. Public is good. Good morning. Oh, you're ready? Okay, perfect timing. You're ready? Yeah, perfect. Okay. We're here. I'll go on the Zoom. Remember Charlie? Oh, that. Good man, huh? You remember him from Deal? Yes. Also, next step. Wow. Deals. Yeah. You get them all? I'm not going to go on tonight. Okay. See you next Monday. Start the show. We did. However you want. Yeah, as you wish. Yes. That's correct. So that's the Allah